Before we settle in, make yourself comfortable. Welcome to Stellar Sleep Tales, a calm journey into the mind's night shift. If you'd like each new chapter to arrive quietly, without the need to search, tap subscribe now. This is your time to let the day fade and curiosity guide you gently toward rest. Picture the day's light lowering, like a slow-drawn curtain. Muscles release their grip, shoulders feel a little heavier against the surface beneath you. This isn't idleness, your brain is setting the stage for one of the most essential performances it gives each night. It's about to guide every cell, thought, and emotion into a sequence as old as life itself. While you've been moving through the day, your internal 24-hour clock, the circadian rhythm, has been quietly tracking light and darkness, adjusting temperature, and managing a symphony of signals. Morning sunlight raised your energy, while these late hours are marked by a gentle cooling and a chemical whisper, it's safe to rest. Alongside this, another force, sleep pressure, has been building. A chemical called adenosine has been accumulating in your brain all day, adding weight to your eyelids and inviting you into stillness. This duet between clock and pressure is why, right now, rest feels not just possible but deeply welcome. Close your eyes, and the edges of your world blur. External sounds soften, and inside, the first flashes of hypnagogic imagery appear, a collage of shapes, colors, and fragments that make just enough sense to hold your attention before slipping away. Your heartbeat eases. Breathing slows. The thinking mind begins to surrender control, allowing older, quieter systems to take over. Every so often, a small twitch of the limb or a sudden jolt might pull you back for a moment. That's a hypnic jerk, a reflex left over from a time when falling asleep in an unsafe position could have been dangerous. Your body still checks in for safety as you cross this threshold. In this first descent, the brain's waste-clearing network, the glymphatic system, becomes more active. It rinses away byproducts of wakefulness, including compounds linked to cognitive decline if left to accumulate. Muscles relax further, blood pressure lowers, and core temperature dips, all in service of the repair work ahead. The early night is dominated by deep, slow brain waves, broad, measured pulses that allow neurons to communicate in perfect synchrony. In these moments, your hippocampus replays the day's memories, deciding which to weave into long-term storage and which to release. Skills you practiced earlier begin their refinement here, quietly smoothing themselves for the next day. Sometimes you rise toward lighter sleep without quite waking, shifting position or half hearing a distant sound. These brief returns to the surface are part of the design. They keep you tuned to your environment without breaking the deeper processes underway. By now, your muscles are still, your mind is quieter, yet the work is anything but over. Emotional memories are being softened, their sharper edges gently sanded down. That conversation that felt charged earlier? It may register with less force tomorrow because your brain has rehearsed it in low-stress conditions during the night. The body is making use of this downshift too. Growth hormone pulses through your system, aiding tissue repair and bolstering the immune response. Inflammation is regulated. Energy reserves are balanced for the day ahead. If you train or work physically, these are the hours when your body rebuilds, adapting to the demands you've placed on it. Even now, the seeds of dreaming are being sown. They're modest in this stage, flashes, fragments, and moments that act more as emotional notes than full stories. The richer narratives are still ahead, waiting for a shift in the brain's balance. Cycles like this repeat through the night, roughly 90 minutes each, but their composition changes. Early cycles are heavy on this slow, restorative work. Later cycles will give more time to a different state entirely, one where your mind grows as active as it is in daylight, painting vivid worlds without moving a muscle. Think of this stage as the foundation of a building. Without it, the structure above cannot stand. Skipping or cutting it short doesn't just leave you tired, it robs you of the deep repair that underpins both physical health and mental clarity. Chronic late nights or fragmented schedules shave time from this phase, and the effects are cumulative. The relationship between deep sleep and memory is one of nature's most efficient partnerships. As the hippocampus replays the day's moments, the neocortex receives them, slots them into the right place, and integrates them with existing knowledge. Without this nightly conference, facts fade and skills lose sharpness. This is why, sleeping on it, isn't just a saying, it's a literal neurological advantage. There's also a chemical rebalancing act happening here. Neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine reset their levels, stabilizing mood and motivation for the coming day. The amygdala, a hub for emotional response, finds its reactions tempered, preparing you to face challenges with steadier composure. Your body position, ambient temperature, and even scent can nudge the quality of this stage. Slightly cooler air supports the natural drop in core temperature. Familiar, non-intrusive smells can act as cues for safety, helping you slide deeper without resistance. Light becomes the biggest environmental cue. Too much blue light in the evening and the circadian clock delays its rest signal, eating into this crucial window. As the night's first deep sleep cycle nears its end, your brain starts to stir in subtle ways. The broad, slow rhythms give way to more mixed patterns. Eye movements remain minimal, but certain visual and emotional centers begin to warm up. You might catch a fleeting image or sense a mood change as the stage shifts. Then comes the transition, muscles still, but inside, a surge of activity is coming. The quiet work of repair and filing gives way to something far more imaginative. In that next state, scenes will unfold, emotions will be tested, and the mind will rehearse possibilities without consequence. It's the beginning of the vivid dream phases that dominate the later night. For now, though, you remain in the calm after the day's storm. Your body is restored, your mind is decluttering, and the stage is set. When you wake, you'll carry none of the conscious memory of this phase, but you'll move through the day with the benefits written quietly into every system. Before we begin, find a position that feels steady and unhurried. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, our calm exploration of the mind's night journey. If you'd like the next chapter to arrive quietly when you're ready, a quick subscribe ensures it finds you. Now, close your eyes. The day is already receding, and the deeper currents of the early night are waiting to carry you further from the shore. The stillness you feel now is not idle. It is when your body and brain work in ways daytime simply doesn't allow. Heart rate has slowed to a gentle cadence. Breathing is steady. Muscles, freed from constant micro-adjustments, enter a sustained rest. Yet beneath this outer calm, a complex network of activity is underway, a repair, cleanup, and reset cycle tuned to the needs of this exact moment in your 24-hour rhythm. This first part of the night leans heavily into deep, slow-wave sleep. Imagine a stadium full of lights all dimming and brightening together in long, rolling waves. That synchrony allows neurons to coordinate the transfer of the day's memories, not in the rush of daytime multitasking, but in an unhurried, focused replay. Earlier today's events are revisited in silence, filed into long-term storage, or gently released to make space for what's next. While this filing happens, another layer of maintenance unfolds. The glymphatic system is at peak activity now, circulating cerebrospinal fluid through brain tissue, clearing metabolic byproducts before they accumulate. Think of it as a night crew moving through quiet corridors, removing the debris of thought and action so tomorrow starts on a clean slate. This isn't something you can feel directly, but the clarity you notice after proper rest is one of its calling cards. In these early cycles, growth hormone pulses through the bloodstream, repairing microtears in muscle, supporting bone density, and encouraging cell renewal. Immune cells mobilize, scanning for potential threats and repairing damage that went unnoticed during the rush of the day. Skipping this phase deprives the body of one of its most potent self-care windows, a deficit that builds subtly over time. You may think of dreams as the headline act of sleep, but these hours hold their own form of subtle imagery. Simple fragments can drift through, a scene from earlier, a face, a sound, like single brushstrokes on a canvas not yet filled in. They are more fleeting, less elaborate than the narrative dreams to come, yet still part of the brain's integration work. It's as if the mind is sketching ideas, warming up for the more vivid creations of later phases. Even without conscious awareness, your environment still leaves an imprint on this stage. The temperature of the room, the absence or presence of steady sound, the familiarity of scent, each offers cues that either deepen or lighten your rest. Cooler air supports the natural dip in core body temperature. Consistent, safe noise, like gentle rainfall or a distant hum, can mask disturbances that might otherwise break the rhythm. If you were to look inside the brain right now, you'd see a landscape dominated by delta waves, slow, high-amplitude electrical patterns that signal deep restorative activity. In younger adults, this phase is abundant, but with age, its proportion naturally decreases. That's one reason why protecting these hours from interruption matters more as the years go by. It's also why late-night light exposure, irregular sleep schedules, or stimulants in the evening can have outsized impacts. They don't just delay sleep, they rob you of prime slow-wave time. And yet, even in this depth, the brain remains lightly tethered to the outside world. A noise out of place, a shift in the mattress, a change in light through the eyelids, any of these can draw you briefly toward wakefulness. The key difference from lighter stages is that, here, those interruptions are less likely to wake you fully. This is protective. It balances safety monitoring with the uninterrupted execution of the body's most restorative tasks. Hormonal rhythms align with this architecture. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, is at its lowest point here. This lull prevents unnecessary alertness and allows other repair processes to dominate. Later in the night, cortisol will begin its gradual climb, preparing you to wake. But for now, it stays quiet, keeping the stage clear for recovery. In the background, the hippocampus and neocortex are running what could be described as a multi-channel transfer. Experiences from the day are replayed in the hippocampus while the cortex receives and integrates them into broader networks of knowledge. It's not just facts, spatial memories, learned movements, and even emotional impressions are part of the transfer. Without these rehearsals, yesterday's learning remains fragile, easily overwritten by new information. There's also pruning at work. Connections between neurons that saw little use during the day may weaken, freeing up resources for stronger, more frequently used pathways. This is efficiency, not loss. The brain trims to grow, much like a gardener shapes a plant to make it flourish. By morning, the network is more streamlined, better able to adapt to the demands ahead. At certain points, you may shift position without breaking the depth of this stage. These subtle adjustments prevent strain on joints and muscles, allowing circulation to remain steady through the night. Even these movements are guided by the brain's monitoring systems, keeping you comfortable without waking you. As the first deep sleep cycle draws toward its natural close, electrical activity begins to change shape. The dominance of delta waves softens, making way for mixed patterns that hint at the next phase. Eye movements may flicker faintly, breathing might become slightly less regular, and visual areas of the brain start to stir. These are the quiet preludes to REM, the vivid, later night phase where storytelling takes center stage. But before that shift, your body will pass through lighter transitional sleep, giving systems a chance to reset and prepare. Heart rate lifts slightly, muscle tone returns just a touch, and your awareness becomes more easily roused. These moments act as a bridge, not long enough to pull you into wakefulness, but enough to reposition you for the next cycle. If the night continues undisturbed, each cycle will revisit deep slow-wave sleep, but with gradually shorter durations in favor of longer REM periods. Early in the night, as in this chapter, the focus is on the quiet labor that restores and resets. Later, the balance will tilt toward emotional processing and dream-driven creativity. For now, the most important task is to allow this stage to complete without unnecessary disruption. Protecting it is simple but deliberate: dim light in the evening, cooler room temperature, avoiding stimulants late in the day, and creating a consistent wind-down routine. Over time, these cues teach your body to enter and preserve the depth of early night sleep more efficiently. When you eventually wake, many hours and cycles from now, you may not remember anything from this part of the night. But its signature will be present in your steadier mood, clearer thinking, and physical ease. It's an invisible investment that pays back every waking hour, even if you never consciously notice its transactions. We've explored the silent power of the early night, the clearing, the restoring, the quiet rebuilding that lays the foundation for all that follows. Next, we'll step into a state that defies first impressions, a still body hosting an intensely active mind. This is where the architecture of dreams becomes clear, and where the science of REM reveals itself not as mystery, but as masterwork. Before you settle in, adjust until you feel no urge to move. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, where we explore the night as both sanctuary and laboratory. If you'd like each new chapter to find you quietly, a quick subscribe now will ensure it arrives without you ever having to search. Tonight, we step into a paradox, a state where the body lies still, yet the mind pulses with color, emotion, and motion. It arrives on schedule, almost exactly as though the brain has been saving a special act for later in the night. After the deep, measured waves of early sleep have done their restorative work, there's a shift. Breathing becomes a touch less regular, the eyes begin subtle, darting movements beneath closed lids, and electrical activity across the cortex quickens to a pace closer to waking life. Outwardly, you look utterly at rest. Inside, you are in one of the most active and mysterious states the brain generates, the dream-heavy phase known for its rapid eye movements. You might wonder why this part of the night is kept for later, why it comes in progressively longer stretches as morning approaches. One theory is that the earlier part of the night must first clear the workspace, repair, reset, and reorganize, before the mind can afford to immerse itself in such vivid and often unpredictable narratives. Once the groundwork is done, the brain invites you into a theater where past, present, and imagined futures coexist, and the usual rules of time and physics are not enforced. The body is under a form of safe paralysis here, a deliberate shutdown of most muscle activity. Without it, your physical self might attempt to enact the dream's movements, an unsafe situation for both you and anyone nearby. In this immobilized state, the brain can run elaborate simulations without fear of actual harm. It is one of nature's most elegant safeguards, allowing for the free-form play of imagination while keeping the sleeper physically anchored. Inside this phase, emotional centers light up intensely. The amygdala and limbic system are more active now than in the calm depths of slow-wave sleep. This heightened emotional engagement gives dreams their intensity, the rush of joy, the sting of fear, the pull of nostalgia. Meanwhile, regions linked to logic and critical evaluation step back. That's why dreams can bend reality in extraordinary ways without your sleeping mind protesting. A sudden shift from one setting to another feels natural in a dream, because the part of you that would question it is resting. Visual areas of the brain are particularly engaged, constructing detailed scenes from fragments of memory, imagination, and emotional tone. You might walk through a place you've never visited yet recognize instantly, or speak to someone whose face is both familiar and altered. These are not random glitches, they are the brain's way of blending material for purposes that may range from problem-solving to emotional rehearsal. Some of the most memorable dreams occur when a vivid moment coincides with a brief surface awakening. You open your eyes with the imagery still fresh, sometimes so clear it feels as though the scene is continuing just behind them. Yet unless captured quickly, dream memory fades. The biochemical environment that supports dream creation does not prioritize long-term recall. It's designed more for processing than archiving. Researchers suspect this phase serves several interconnected roles, strengthening neural pathways formed during the day, integrating emotional experiences, and fostering creativity by allowing the free association of disparate ideas. It's as though the mind runs both therapy and brainstorming sessions while you sleep, without the constraints of waking logic. Consider how a challenging problem can seem unsolvable in the evening, yet a fresh angle appears after a night's rest. That insight may have been seated here, in the collision of unrelated memories and concepts within the vivid theater of the later night. The brain, unpoliced by strict reasoning, can make connections too unconventional for the waking mind to reach unaided. There's a notable difference between early and late-night episodes of this state. In the first appearance, not long after falling asleep, the phase may last only a few minutes, a short, vivid burst before deep slow-wave sleep reclaims you. As the night cycles progress, these intervals lengthen, sometimes reaching 40 minutes or more in the final cycle before waking. This is why cutting sleep short can disproportionately rob you of this rich mental activity. While most dreams here are private to the sleeper, their emotional residue can shape waking mood. A peaceful or joyful dream may leave you lighter in the morning, an unresolved or tense one can create a subtle undertone until it's processed or fades. Even so, the act of dreaming is not about producing pleasant content, it's about giving the brain room to work through whatever is most pressing or relevant, whether or not it's comfortable. In many people, dreams during this state follow certain recurring themes. Flying, falling, being pursued, discovering hidden rooms, these motifs may be the brain's shorthand for processing shared human experiences of control, vulnerability, or curiosity. Though interpretations are tempting, the more useful perspective is to see them as adaptive rehearsals or reflections rather than literal messages. The remarkable thing about this phase is how it balances chaos with purpose. Scenes may shift wildly, yet the underlying processes, memory integration, emotional regulation, creative synthesis, unfold with remarkable consistency. It's a reminder that even in what appears random, the brain is following its own quiet order. Once you are deep in this state, external stimuli are filtered differently. Significant sounds, like a baby's cry or a name spoken by a loved one, can still penetrate and wake you, but most background noise is ignored. This selective alertness ensures safety without shattering the immersive work being done inside. Dream content itself can be influenced subtly by waking life. A scent lingering from the evening, a sound from the environment, or even the position of your body can weave its way into the dream narrative. These incorporations are not perfect replicas of reality, but transformed elements that serve the unfolding story. In this phase, the brain's neurochemistry shifts compared to both wakefulness and other sleep stages. Levels of norepinephrine, a chemical associated with alert stress responses, are low, allowing emotionally charged memories to be revisited without triggering a full physiological reaction. This makes it an ideal environment for reframing difficult experiences in ways that can reduce their sting over time. Physical restoration is still occurring, though the emphasis now is less on structural repair and more on fine-tuning neural networks. Synapses that were strengthened during learning are reactivated, tested, and sometimes reweighted to ensure optimal efficiency. In children, this process may contribute significantly to brain development, which could explain why they spend more time in this state than adults. You might imagine that such intense brain activity would raise energy use, and in fact, it does. Metabolic rates in certain brain regions during this phase can rival those of active wakefulness. Yet the body's energy demands remain low overall because major muscle groups are inactive, conserving resources while the brain does the heavy lifting. From a creative standpoint, this state is unmatched. Writers, scientists, and artists throughout history have credited dreams from these hours with breakthroughs and inspiration. The unique environment, unbound by logic, steeped in emotional resonance, and fueled by an active sensory cortex, is fertile ground for novel ideas. The timing of this phase relative to your wake time is also crucial. Waking naturally from a late-night episode can leave you with a vivid recall and a smooth emotional carryover into the day. Being abruptly woken during it, however, can cause grogginess or a feeling of disorientation as the brain struggles to switch modes quickly. There are rare occasions when the muscle paralysis mechanism falters, allowing dream-related movements to escape into waking muscles. Known as REM behavior disorder, this condition illustrates just how vital that paralysis normally is. Without it, the seamless separation between imagined action and physical stillness breaks down, underscoring the precision of the system in healthy sleep. The continuity from one cycle to the next means that narratives or themes can reappear across the night, sometimes evolving with each return. A challenge faced in an earlier dream might resolve or transform later, suggesting that the brain keeps track of certain threads, revisiting them when conditions are right. As the night draws toward morning, the final visit to this state often coincides with lighter overall sleep. Dreams may become especially elaborate here, sometimes incorporating awareness that you are dreaming. While that awareness can allow for some influence over the narrative, it also risks waking you if pushed too far, a reminder that the boundary between dream and wake is delicate. When this last episode concludes and you wake naturally, the transition can feel like stepping out of a cinema into daylight. The stories recede, the stillness of the body lifts, and you rejoin the waking world with traces, emotional, thematic, or even sensory, still echoing faintly. Before we begin, get comfortable and let your breathing settle. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, where the science of your sleeping mind unfolds in calm detail. If you'd like the next quiet journey to arrive for you without effort, you can subscribe now, then close that thought and return here. Tonight, we step behind the curtain of the mind's theater, into the unseen studio where dreams are built, assembled from scraps of experience, stitched with emotion, and lit by the brain's most creative networks. In the vivid phase you've just learned about, the brain doesn't simply replay the day. It edits, layers, and invents. The raw footage comes from memory, fragments from hours, years, sometimes decades ago. These fragments are lifted from the hippocampus, where they've been stored in varying levels of clarity, and offered up to the cortex. But they don't arrive as perfect scenes. They arrive as puzzle pieces, an image of a room, the rhythm of a voice, the color of an afternoon sky. Some are sharpened with detail, others are blurred around the edges. Emotion acts as the glue. The limbic system decides which pieces belong together, based not on logic but on shared feeling. A childhood street can merge with a conversation from yesterday because they carry the same emotional temperature. Once paired, the visual association areas begin to render them in motion, like a film editor cutting between locations without a thought to continuity, trusting the audience, you, to follow along. The result is a narrative that feels both surprising and inevitable. In waking life, abrupt shifts in scene would pull you out of the moment. Here, you accept them without resistance. The brain has suspended the scrutiny of the prefrontal cortex, letting the story move where emotion and imagery lead. You don't question why the sea turns to a train station, or why a long-gone friend speaks about something you haven't yet done. In this space, the improbable is simply part of the grammar. Some scenes exist purely as composites. A dream city might have the skyline of one place, the street sounds of another, and the smell from a kitchen you knew years ago. These blends aren't accidents. They may allow the brain to explore situations without triggering defenses tied to specific, real-world events. A difficult conversation can be rehearsed with a stand-in, letting you practice responses in safety. Even sensory details, temperature, light, texture, are drawn from stored experiences and adjusted to match the narrative's emotional tone. If the dream needs a feeling of urgency, the light may sharpen and shadows lengthen. For safety, the light may be diffuse, the air warm. You are not only the dreamer but also the audience to a production designed in real time, moment by moment. Main content: how the studio works. This nightly studio runs without a script. There's no storyboard pinned up in the mind, only a set of priorities: process recent events, integrate them with the past, simulate potential futures, and regulate emotional responses. The hippocampus cues memories, the amygdala tags their feeling, and the association cortices fill in the visuals and sounds. Sometimes, you can trace the source of a dream image easily: a cafe you passed in the afternoon, a news clip you watched before bed. More often, the trail is indirect, passing through several layers of association before arriving in its dream form. This indirect route is what allows dreams to be both personal and universal. Your version is yours alone, but its themes may be shared by millions. During especially intense REM periods, the connection between brain hemispheres through the corpus callosum becomes a busy exchange, coordinating imagery and emotion across the split. Visual details from the right hemisphere blend with the language and sequence processing of the left, giving dreams their odd mix of picture and story. The studio doesn't limit itself to replaying the past. It also builds hypothetical versions of events that never happened but could. This is rehearsal in its purest form, not to predict exactly what will occur, but to give you templates for handling situations. Meeting a stranger in a dream may prime you to be more adaptable with real-world encounters, even if the details don't match. Dreams can also serve as a testing ground for integrating new skills. If you've been learning a piece of music, you might not dream of the instrument at all, yet the sequences practiced can appear abstractly, as patterns or motions, embedding them more firmly for use when you wake. The brain can run these simulations faster and with more variation than waking life allows, covering a wide range of possibilities in a short time. Some recurring dream settings may be the studio's favorite sets, efficient backdrops stocked with familiar detail, ready to be redecorated for the night's purposes. These can be comforting or unnerving, depending on the emotional themes being worked through. Noticing these returns can give you a gentle clue about which themes the mind considers unfinished. External input still plays a role. A faint sound might be reinterpreted as part of the plot. A cool draft can become wind in a dream landscape. These incorporations happen so fluidly that you may not notice the join. The brain seizes whatever is available to make the story feel continuous. Interestingly, while dreams are often portrayed as entirely visual, they can involve rich sound design, tactile sensations, and even taste or smell. These sensory layers are sometimes muted compared to sight and sound, but when they appear vividly, they can make a dream linger in memory long after waking. Why the brain invests so much in this nightly production remains partly mysterious. The leading ideas, emotional regulation, memory integration, creative problem solving, may each explain part of the picture. What's clear is that these sessions are not idle. They're a form of active mental work dressed in the clothes of story. Because these operations require a delicate balance, active emotional centers, engaged sensory cortices, suppressed motor output, they are vulnerable to disruption. Stress, irregular schedules, certain medications, and alcohol can all shorten or fragment the dream-heavy phase, limiting the studio's run time. The result can be a subtle decline in mood resilience, creativity, or memory sharpness. Maintaining the health of this system doesn't mean controlling dream content, which is neither realistic nor necessary, but supporting the architecture that allows it to flourish. That means consistency in sleep timing, an environment that cues rest, and habits that let the transition into vivid dreaming occur naturally. When the studio closes each cycle, the mind doesn't simply stop creating, it stores what's useful from that run, then returns to deeper, quieter phases before coming back for another show. By morning, you've often been through several productions, each drawing on a different mix of sources and intentions. If you wake gently after a cycle, there's a greater chance the final scene will linger, not necessarily in perfect recall, but in the form of a mood or perspective you carry into the day. This is the brain's subtle way of letting its night work spill into your waking world, influencing choices, feelings, and even flashes of insight. Before we begin, let yourself settle into a position that feels safe and unhurried. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, our calm, science-based walk through the night's hidden landscapes. If you'd like the next chapter to reach you quietly when it's ready, a quick subscribe now will make sure it finds you. For tonight, we enter a territory most people know but few understand, the uneasy ground of nightmares. Here, the mind's vivid nightly theater takes a darker turn, painting scenes charged with threat, loss, or confusion. But as we'll see, even these storms serve a purpose, and lanterns for navigating them exist. A nightmare begins in the same architecture as other dreams, most often in the later night's vivid, paralyzed phase. The stage is set for imagery, emotion, and narrative, the only difference is the script tilts toward fear, anxiety, or grief. You wake with your pulse elevated, breath quickened, and a lingering residue that can shadow the morning. It's easy to think of these experiences as failures of the dreaming mind, but research suggests they can be part of an adaptive process, a way to simulate threat, rehearse responses, and integrate intense emotions in a safe, contained environment. Not all disturbing dreams are nightmares. Many are bad dreams, unpleasant but not strong enough to jolt you awake. Nightmares tend to cross that threshold, pulling you to the surface. Waking in the middle of one disrupts the emotional processing it may have been attempting, which is why recurrent, distressing nightmares can have lasting impact. This is especially true when the dream content is linked to trauma. In such cases, the repetition can keep emotional wounds raw. Why the brain would create repeated distress is a puzzle. One idea is that for traumatic memories, the normal dampening of stress chemistry in the vivid phase is incomplete, leaving the imagery as potent as in waking life. That's why therapies designed for nightmares, such as imagery rehearsal, focus on rehearsing a new, less threatening version of the dream during the day. By giving the brain an alternative script, you can sometimes shift the direction of the night's performance. Children often have more nightmares than adults, partly due to higher overall time spent in the vivid dream phase and their developing emotional frameworks. For them, the content may be less about past events and more about abstract fears, being lost, separated, or pursued. In adults, nightmare themes are often more specific, tied to lived experience, ongoing stress, or unresolved conflict. At the core of a nightmare is the amygdala, the brain's threat detection hub, firing at high intensity. The vivid dream phase naturally engages the amygdala, but in nightmares, this activation is amplified. Meanwhile, prefrontal regions, those that bring logical reassurance, remain largely subdued. The imbalance leaves the story dominated by fear without the internal narrator stepping in to remind you it's not real. Triggers can be varied. Stress and anxiety are common drivers, as are certain medications that alter neurotransmitter balance. Sleep deprivation itself can increase nightmare frequency, creating a frustrating loop where fear of dreaming makes it harder to sleep, which in turn raises the chance of nightmares. Irregular schedules, alcohol close to bedtime, or even late-night heavy meals can shift sleep architecture in ways that make nightmares more likely. Nightmares are also more frequent after major life changes or during times of uncertainty. The brain appears to use dream space to simulate challenging scenarios, perhaps as a form of preparation. Even if the content is distressing, the act of mental rehearsal can leave you better equipped to handle similar feelings when awake. Recognizing patterns in nightmare content is a first step toward easing their grip. A recurring setting, figure, or sequence often signals an ongoing theme in waking life. This doesn't mean dreams are coded messages to be deciphered literally, but they can point toward emotional territories that need attention. Writing them down on waking, without judgment, can help you spot these threads over time. For those whose nightmares are linked to trauma, specialized approaches like imagery rehearsal therapy or EMDR-supported dream work can be transformative. Imagery rehearsal involves recalling the nightmare while awake, altering it in a way that reduces threat, and then practicing the revised version regularly. Over time, the brain may incorporate these edits, shifting the nighttime narrative. On the physiological side, stabilizing the sleep schedule can reduce nightmare intensity and frequency. Going to bed and waking at consistent times supports the balance between deep restorative sleep and the vivid dream phase, reducing abrupt transitions that can heighten dream intensity. Lowering evening stress through routines, dimming lights, reducing stimulating content, signals safety to the nervous system, making it less likely the night stories will turn threatening. Even with these strategies, occasional nightmares are part of being human. They're a sign that the brain is engaging with powerful material. The goal isn't to eliminate them entirely but to ensure they serve their processing role without spilling into waking distress. Over time, with the right conditions, many people find that nightmare themes evolve, their edges soften, and once frightening imagery becomes less dominant. In some cultures, nightmares are treated not as malfunctions but as messages from the subconscious or spirit world, to be explored rather than avoided. While science frames them as brain-generated narratives, the subjective impact is similar. They demand attention. How you choose to respond, through curiosity, reinterpretation, or therapeutic tools, can change your relationship with them. Before you let the next minutes carry you, adjust into a position where no muscle feels the need to hold on. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales. If you'd like the following journeys to arrive quietly, without you having to search, you can subscribe now, then set that thought aside. Tonight, we look at something invisible yet profound: how your sleeping brain edits your emotional life. While your body lies still, last night's conversations, today's frustrations, and moments you haven't thought of in years are being opened, trimmed, softened, or strengthened. It's not random, it's one of the reasons you wake with the edges of certain feelings worn smooth. All day long, your brain collects not just facts, but the emotions tied to them. A remark from a colleague that stung, a smile from a stranger, the relief after finishing a task, each is stored as an event plus the feeling it carried. By night, you have an entire shelf of fresh emotional files. If left untouched, that shelf would crowd quickly, and emotionally charged moments could keep their raw intensity indefinitely. Sleep, particularly in the later cycles rich in vivid dreaming, is where your brain goes in with the editor's pencil. The process doesn't erase the memory. Instead, it adjusts the tone. Imagine a photograph where the brightness is too harsh. Editing doesn't delete the picture, it brings the light into balance so you can see it clearly without the glare. In a similar way, your sleeping mind replays experiences in the context of safe, reduced stress chemistry. Hormones like norepinephrine are dialed down in this stage, giving you a way to revisit intense moments without the body's full fight or flight response. Often, you won't recall these sessions. They happen woven into the dreams you do and don't remember, mixing in fragments from the past and imagined futures. That conversation you dreaded reliving might show up as a symbolic scene with altered characters and setting, yet it leaves you less reactive when you face something similar awake. This is why we sometimes wake to find that sting gone from yesterday's moment, even though we can still recall it clearly. The amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex each take on a role in this overnight edit. The amygdala supplies the raw emotional tags, the hippocampus retrieves and relays context from memory, and the prefrontal cortex, though less active than in full wakefulness, begins to weave in balanced perspective. The reduced norepinephrine levels create a safe lab for this exchange, allowing reconsolidation, the restoring of a memory in a slightly altered form. This isn't just for negative feelings. Positive events are also refined, their warmth kept intact but placed in balance with the rest of your experience so they don't overshadow other priorities. In this way, sleep acts less like a biased judge and more like a meticulous archivist, making sure the emotional library is useful, accessible, and not overwhelmed by a few loud entries. When this process is disrupted by stress, irregular sleep patterns, certain medications, or sleep disorders, the effects show up in mood regulation. People deprived of adequate vivid dream sleep tend to react more strongly to stress, read neutral expressions as negative, and recover more slowly from emotional blows. It's as if the day's emotional files were left unsorted, cluttering the desk for the next morning. You might have noticed that after a conflict, a single night's rest can make it easier to see the other person's point of view. That's the editorial balance at work, the emotional charge reduced just enough for perspective to return. Without this reset, resentment and irritability stack up quickly, even over minor issues. The brain's editor also works on anticipation, rehearsing possible futures in a way that blunts anxiety. If you have a presentation the next day, sleep may bring dreams in which you're speaking, but with benign or even absurd details added, lowering the perceived threat. Waking up, the scenario feels a little less daunting because you've been there, in a safe space. Interestingly, this editing isn't a solitary process locked away from the body. While the brain balances feelings, the body shifts too. Heart rate variability improves, indicating resilience in the nervous system, and cortisol remains low in the first part of the night, only rising near morning to prepare for wakefulness. This synchrony means the emotional edits made in the brain are supported by physiological readiness. There's a cumulative benefit to protecting this nightly work. One night of emotional editing can take the edge off a bad day, but a week or more of consistent, complete sleep can shift baseline mood and stress resilience. Over time, the brain builds a more stable emotional landscape, one less prone to dramatic swings and more capable of absorbing challenges. To help the editor, your wind-down routine matters. Dimming lights signals the circadian system, calming activity in arousal centers before the editing phase arrives. Avoiding emotionally intense media close to bedtime can reduce the load of fresh, highly charged material the brain has to process immediately. Gentle activities, reading something neutral or reflective, practicing slow breathing, prime the system for the kind of constructive editing that supports rather than destabilizes. When you wake after a full night, the signs of good emotional editing are subtle but real. The argument you didn't want to revisit feels less important, the stressful task ahead seems doable, and your patience with others, and yourself, is noticeably greater. These aren't random fluctuations, they're the result of an overnight editorial process you didn't have to consciously direct. There will still be mornings after fitful nights when emotions feel raw. That's natural, the editor needs the full stage to work well. The important part is recognizing that with consistent care for sleep, you give your brain repeated opportunities to refine and balance your inner life. Settle in. Let your body find the kind of stillness that doesn't have to be held, the kind that simply happens when there's nothing left to do. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, where each chapter lets you drift while learning the quiet science unfolding inside you. If you'd like the next journey to arrive without you needing to search for it, subscribe now, then let that thought go. Tonight, we explore how your brain spends part of the night not just reviewing the past, but rehearsing for what's next. You've heard the phrase, sleep on it, countless times, and perhaps you've even tried it when faced with a problem. What's less known is that your brain doesn't just passively wait for clarity, it actively uses your sleeping hours to model, test, and refine tomorrow's possibilities. These rehearsals take place in the interplay of vivid dreaming and subtle neural replay, running through potential scenarios so you can move into the next day better prepared. Sometimes, it's clear, a musician dreams of playing their piece and wakes to find their fingers surer on the instrument. A runner dreams of the course and feels steadier in real life. Other times, it's invisible, you just find yourself responding with more agility to a conversation or a challenge you hadn't consciously planned for. That's the result of your brain's night shift practice. This isn't wishful thinking, it's rooted in the way your brain consolidates motor skills, decision-making patterns, and even social strategies during sleep. Much like the edits to emotion we explored in the last chapter, this rehearsal work is seamless, automatic, and tailored to your unique recent experiences. You're both the scriptwriter and the actor, though neither role is aware of the other. During the later cycles of the night, your brain alternates between the vivid, paralyzed dream state and lighter phases that allow more integration. In these windows, patterns of neural activity from the day are replayed. This neural replay can occur at high speed, compressing hours of practice or experience into seconds. In lab studies, animals who learned a maze during the day produced the same neural firing sequences at night, as if running the route in miniature. Similar patterns have been seen in human brains, albeit with more complex layers. This mechanism isn't limited to physical skills. Social interactions, problem-solving approaches, and even creative thought processes can be rehearsed. You might dream of a meeting you'll have next week, but with invented details. The brain is stress-testing your responses in a safe environment, ready to discard what doesn't work and keep what does. The imagery can be symbolic rather than literal. If you're preparing for a presentation, your dream stage might be a school gym instead of the actual conference room. What matters is the rehearsal of speaking, the pacing, the emotional regulation, not the accuracy of the props. That's why dream rehearsal can feel bizarre yet still produce useful results. Rehearsal is also about adaptability. Because dream content often bends rules, you may face exaggerated or unexpected events, the audience that turns into a flock of birds, the road that suddenly twists upward into the sky. Navigating these absurdities strengthens your ability to adjust quickly, a skill just as valuable in waking life as the practice of predictable routines. Athletes sometimes use waking visualization as part of training, but the sleeping brain does it automatically. And unlike deliberate practice, dream rehearsal bypasses the fatigue that comes from physical repetition. Your muscles rest while your motor cortex continues to refine the timing and coordination of movement patterns. Problem-solving benefits from this too. Without the constraints of conscious logic, the brain can try unconventional combinations, sometimes producing solutions that appear to arrive out of nowhere the next morning. Many inventors, artists, and scientists have credited a night's sleep, and the dreams within it, for breakthroughs that seemed unreachable by sheer effort. For those learning new material, whether it's a language, a technical concept, or a piece of music, the timing of sleep after study matters. Going to bed soon after learning increases the likelihood that the information will be prioritized for rehearsal and consolidation. Delay the rest too long, and other experiences may dilute its importance in the queue. Interestingly, dream rehearsal can also soften anxiety about future events. By simulating them in a low-risk form, the brain can adjust the emotional response so that when the moment arrives in waking life, you approach it with more composure. This mirrors the way exposure therapy works, but without the conscious discomfort, you're rehearsing while unaware. The value of this process depends on a full night's architecture. Cutting sleep short truncates the later cycles where these rehearsals tend to concentrate. That's why consistently waking too early can leave you feeling underprepared, even if you've had enough total hours to avoid obvious fatigue. You can't dictate the script, but you can influence the setup. A brief mental run-through of an upcoming event before sleep can increase the odds that it will feature in your night's rehearsal. Keep the tone of this preview calm and constructive. You're giving the brain material to work with, not handing it a reason to panic. Dream rehearsal is collaborative in a way. Past experiences provide the raw material, present concerns shape the theme, and the brain's innate creativity fills in the gaps. By morning, the results are integrated quietly, influencing your decisions and actions without fanfare. Protecting this work is about respecting the entirety of your sleep cycles. A consistent schedule, an environment conducive to rest, and a habit of winding down without overstimulation all support the natural progression into the rehearsal-rich later phases. The payoff isn't just in specific tasks, it's in the general readiness you carry into each day. When you wake after a night where rehearsal has done its job, you may not recall the dream, but you might notice a subtler confidence. You react to the unexpected with less hesitation. Your body finds the right rhythm faster. The conversation flows more easily. That's the invisible evidence of hours spent in a theater you never consciously entered. Before we begin, make yourself comfortable and let your breath find its own rhythm. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, our calm exploration of the hidden patterns of the sleeping mind. If you'd like each new chapter to arrive quietly for you, without searching, you can subscribe now, then simply return your attention here. Tonight, we walk into the territory of recurring dreams, those familiar landscapes and situations the mind visits again and again, sometimes over years. They can be comforting, frustrating, or puzzling, but they always seem to carry a sense of significance. A recurring dream might revisit the same place, a school hallway, a house you've never lived in, a stretch of road under strange light. Or it might replay a type of event, searching for something you can't find, trying to speak with no sound coming out, being late despite your best efforts. The details can vary, but the core elements remain. Each time you return, the dream seems to pick up where it left off, even if months have passed since your last visit. Why the mind does this is still a subject of study, but a leading thought is that recurring dreams flag unfinished emotional or cognitive work. The setting and events act as shorthand, allowing the brain to revisit the same theme without starting from scratch. Like a bookmarked page in a complex book, the dream can open the same chapter of your inner story instantly. What's striking is how these dreams can change subtly over time. You might notice new rooms added to the familiar house, or the tone of an often stressful scene becoming calmer. These shifts suggest that the brain's work on the underlying theme is evolving, even if you aren't consciously aware of it while awake. Some recurring dreams are neutral or even pleasant, walking along a sunlit path, flying over a familiar coastline. Others lean into tension, placing you in variations of the same challenge. Whether positive or negative, they tend to be vivid and memorable, leaving an imprint that carries into the morning. Recurring dreams often occur in the vivid phase of the night cycles, but their persistence comes from how the brain tags certain narratives as worth revisiting. Emotional salience plays a big role. The more unresolved or important a feeling, the more likely the brain is to stage it again in a form you'll recognize. Settings in recurring dreams are efficient. Once established, they don't need to be rebuilt from scratch each time. Neural networks that hold these constructs can be reactivated quickly, saving effort and allowing the night's focus to stay on whatever problem-solving or emotional rehearsal the dream is attempting. The emotional core might not be obvious from the surface details. A dream of being unprepared for an exam might have little to do with school and more to do with feeling unready for a responsibility in waking life. Likewise, a dream of endlessly searching for a room could reflect a real-world sense of missing information or opportunity. The brain uses metaphor in much the same way a storyteller does, to convey something abstract through concrete images. Tracking these dreams can reveal gradual change. Writing them down soon after waking, even in shorthand, captures details you might otherwise lose. Over time, patterns may emerge, the dream appearing more often during stress, or changing tone after a life event. This record can show you whether the narrative is resolving, intensifying, or simply holding steady. Recurring dreams aren't inherently negative. Pleasant ones can serve as a kind of emotional touchstone, revisiting a place or situation that consistently offers comfort. These dreams can act as a mental, safe room, available when your waking life is demanding. Knowing you have such a space can add to your resilience, even if it's only accessible in sleep. For those whose recurring dreams are distressing, there are gentle ways to influence their trajectory without trying to force control. Practicing relaxed visualization of a preferred ending or alteration during the day can sometimes introduce changes into the night's version. This doesn't always happen immediately, but with repetition, the dream's tone or outcome can shift. The persistence of recurring dreams speaks to the brain's long-term approach to certain issues. Some themes simply take more than one night to process, and the return visits are evidence of ongoing work. In this way, the dream is less of an unsolved riddle and more of a reminder that your mind is paying sustained attention to something it considers important. Environmental cues can occasionally trigger the return of a familiar dream. A scent, a sound, or revisiting a real-world location similar to the dream setting can prime the relevant neural networks before sleep. When the conditions align, the stage is set for another visit. The evolution of recurring dreams can be subtle. Over years, a once threatening dream can become neutral, or even invert into something positive. This transition often reflects parallel shifts in waking life, growth, resolution, new coping skills, even if you can't pinpoint the exact link. Not all recurring dreams are about unresolved conflict. Some may be linked to identity, values, or aspirations, providing a stable backdrop against which your mind tests different scenarios. They can be as much about continuity as they are about change. Approaching these dreams with curiosity rather than frustration can transform the way you experience them. Even distressing versions can be reframed as signals, encouraging you to look at what might need attention in your waking world. In this way, recurring dreams become less of an intrusion and more of an ongoing conversation with yourself. The familiarity of these dreamscapes can also make them fertile ground for developing lucid awareness. Because you recognize the setting, you may more easily notice that you're dreaming, opening the door to gently influencing events or simply observing them with a clearer sense of detachment. This can reduce the intensity of distressing versions and deepen the pleasure of positive ones. Supporting the healthy unfolding of recurring dreams isn't about chasing or avoiding them, but about creating a sleep environment and schedule that allows the full cycle of dreaming to occur. Consistent, adequate rest gives the brain the time it needs to revisit and, eventually, reshape these narratives. When you wake from a recurring dream, taking a quiet moment before moving can help you carry any insights or shifts it offered into the day. Whether it's a fresh perspective, a softened fear, or just the comfort of having been back in a familiar place, that residue is part of your ongoing connection to your own inner world. Settle back and allow your breath to slow, each exhale dropping you further into ease. Welcome to Stellar Sleep Tales, our calm, unhurried journey into the secret work your brain does at night. If you'd like the next series to arrive quietly when you're ready for it, you can subscribe now, and then release that thought entirely. Tonight, we explore dreams that lean forward in time, those strange, sometimes startling visions where the mind appears to have already walked through moments your waking life has yet to encounter. Most of the time, dreams weave the past and present into new shapes. But now and then, they seem to run ahead. You wake with the vivid memory of a place you've never been, a conversation you've never had, or a problem you've never faced, only to find, days or months later, something in waking life echoes the scene. This phenomenon can feel uncanny, even prophetic, but it doesn't require a supernatural explanation. The brain is a prediction machine, constantly modeling the near and distant future, and the dream state is one of its most creative prediction labs. In daylight, your mind tests forecasts cautiously, constrained by logic, time, and resources. In dreams, those limits dissolve. Your brain can compress months of potential scenarios into a single night's theater, mixing them with emotional rehearsal so they feel real. Whether or not the details align later, these simulations may prepare you emotionally, mentally, and physically for what's to come. The idea that dreams can anticipate the future is rooted in the brain's constant predictive work. Even as you listen now, neural networks are estimating what you'll hear and see next, adjusting as reality confirms or surprises them. At night, freed from incoming sensory demands, these same systems can explore possibilities far beyond the immediate. These future-leaning dreams are not fortune-telling in the mystical sense. They're the product of the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and default mode network running countless what-if sequences based on your memories, habits, and environment. Much like a chess player thinking several moves ahead, your brain explores potential paths and outcomes. In dreams, it can do so at high speed and in richly emotional contexts. Often, the building blocks come from recent experiences combined in novel ways. Meeting someone new, hearing about an opportunity, or sensing a change in your environment can all feed into the night's simulations. The brain tests versions of how you might respond, which in turn can make you more ready when related situations arise in waking life. Emotional preparation is a key part of this. If you dream about giving a speech in an unfamiliar setting, you're not rehearsing the exact event, you're acclimating to the sensation of being observed, the pacing of your words, the way you steady your breathing under pressure. When a real-world challenge arrives, you've already practiced the emotional regulation that supports performance. Some dreams seem to predict by chance. The sheer volume of simulations means a few will coincide closely with future events. But even then, the utility is real. Those simulations have strengthened your readiness, whether or not the match was perfect. The feeling of déjà vu you get in such moments is your brain recognizing a pattern it has already run. Pattern recognition is what makes these experiences so vivid. The brain is highly attuned to noticing when current events overlap with stored imagery or emotional tone. This match triggers a sense of familiarity, even if the details are different. You feel as though you've been here before because, in a sense, you have, in your own mind. The dream state also allows the exploration of low-probability scenarios that waking logic might dismiss. In daily planning, unlikely outcomes are often ignored to conserve effort. In dreams, the cost of exploring them is negligible, so the brain can test responses to rare but impactful situations. If they happen later, you're not starting from zero. An example: You might dream of navigating a city blackout, even though your waking self has never experienced one. In the dream, you problem solve, coordinate with others, and find light sources. If such an event occurred in real life, elements of your behavior could feel instinctive, drawn from that prior mental rehearsal. These simulations extend beyond practical skills. They can explore changes in relationships, shifts in identity, or emotional milestones. Dreaming of reconciling with someone, for instance, can soften barriers so that when an opportunity for resolution arises, you approach it with greater openness. The interplay between recurring dreams and future-oriented ones is also noteworthy. Sometimes a recurring setting becomes the backdrop for new, future-leaning scenarios. The familiarity of the environment frees the mind to focus on the new element, the person, challenge, or event it wants to model. Over time, these updates can signal that the underlying theme is evolving. Supporting the brain's ability to run effective simulations is much like supporting any other aspect of sleep health. Consistent schedules, reduced late-night stress, and an environment that signals safety all allow the predictive systems to work without unnecessary interruption. Fragmented or shortened sleep reduces the number of cycles available for these complex rehearsals, limiting the range of futures explored. There's also a creative benefit to engaging with these dreams gently when you recall them. Writing them down without forcing meaning can reveal patterns, types of challenges, emotional tones, or recurring outcomes that reflect what your mind is prioritizing. Over months or years, this record can give you insight into your own evolving readiness and focus. Importantly, recognizing the predictive nature of these dreams doesn't require you to take them literally. Their value lies not in accuracy but in preparation. A dream of crossing a narrow bridge over water may never match a waking event exactly, but the balance, patience, and calm you practice there can apply to dozens of real-world situations. The final cycles of the night, rich in both vivid dreaming and lighter transitions toward waking, are prime territory for this future-focused work. As morning approaches, the brain often integrates the results of these simulations into a mood and mindset that will carry through the day. Waking naturally at the end of such a cycle can leave you feeling aligned, as though the day's script is already in your hands. When you think about it, this is one of the most remarkable offerings of the sleeping brain, not just to restore you from the past, not just to balance the present, but to send you forward already rehearsed for 1,000 possible tomorrows.